I've always written most of my life, and I've always been the kind of person that has a lot of ideas. I don't know if everyone has that, and I always say that's the kind of thing you can't really teach. You can teach people to write better, I think, but I don't know if you can teach them to have ideas. So for me, it's usually the kind of wild ideas that I just get when I'm walking down the street or 3 in the morning when I can't sleep and desperately need to write that story. I think I've always been quite a dialogue heavy author because I think I twigged quite early on that if you have a lot of dialogue, it makes your work a lot pacier, and just on the page it physically looks a lot more readable, which does something psychological. If you open a book and there's a huge chunk of text, it makes you switch off a little bit. So I don't find it a huge problem. I suppose my technique is to write, try and write quite realistic dialogue as much as possible, and then maybe pare it back a little bit and think, is there anything that I need to cut? Can I do the reported speech instead? I think definitely it is to write unrealistic dialogue. So people speaking in big chunks, people speaking in a very ordered way that sounds pre-prepared, when in fact there's no way they could have pre-prepared it. People who don't put in any hesitations, any repetitions, any interruptions. So really it becomes like a series of monologues rather than the dialogue. And I think that's the really key, is it's dialogue is supposed to be two people listening to each other, or two people or more listening to each other and adjusting what they're saying accordingly. So it's probably trying to be too ordered, trying to make dialogue that sounds very impressive but doesn't sound real. So I write in a third person. I do think that even when you're writing not in the first person voice is very important, as you mentioned, and it's definitely filtered through her thoughts and the way that the words that she would use, the language she would think in. When I came to write this series, it was definitely the character that came first, and the situation, the idea of having a cross-border policing unit, people from different backgrounds, north, south of the border, and also from the mainland. That came to me first, and I thought, oh, that would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? And then one by one, the characters kind of came to me, and the story was probably the last thing that came, the actual plot. I get asked that quite a lot actually, and I wish I had a typical day of writing, but it's always different. I always have different things to do. I teach quite a lot. I always have bits and pieces of admin to do. So it's rare that I actually have a kind of writing structure to my day, to be honest. I just fit it in when I can. And I think that works quite well for me actually, because I try not to be too precious about it or think, well, I need 5 hours to get a good run at this. I'll just say to myself, well, today you have 15 minutes, so try and write as much as you can in that time. And actually you can write quite a lot if you just don't stop and don't think about it. So it's more just a case of take each day as it comes and try and fit in as much as I can. I think I was fairly lucky actually, and I think I was also very clueless. I went in a couple of masterclasses myself, but only quite late in the process. And I really wished I'd done them sooner, because I realised that I actually had no idea what I was doing at all. And it seemed very daunting, but actually what's great about publishing, I think fiction publishing in particular, is it's so straightforward. You know what you're supposed to be doing. You send your work to an agent, you send them what they ask for, whether they ask for 3 chapters and a synopsis or whatever it is they want. And they will read it. Most of the time they will read it and get back to you at some point, even if it's a no. So you just know really that you have to keep on trying until that happens. So I had written a different novel, which I spent about 3 years sort of agonising over in private and not really getting any help with it or going to any classes. And then it took me about 6 months to get the courage up to send the book out. And I was so terrified that someone was going to just reject it out of hand. And then of course that did happen, and actually it was fine. I recovered. So I sent it to one at a time, because I didn't know that you were allowed to do multiple submissions, which just shows how completely clueless I was about the whole process. So I got about 4 agents in total, and I did get interest, and I did get asked for the full manuscript from a couple of people, which was really encouraging. And then one agent that had it for a really long time, because I'm really impatient, I just wrote another book, basically. In that time, that was my approach. And then I entered into a competition for unpublished novels, came second. I got an agent from that. They actually started approaching me when the press release went out, and signed with an agent and sold pretty quickly after that. So I was quite lucky in a way, but I also did not know what I was doing, so I would probably advise people to do a slightly different path than I did. Oh, it's such a good question. I think it would probably be don't be in such a rush, because I really felt so impatient. As I said, I was so impatient that I thought it was easier to write a whole book than wait for someone to get back to me. So I would probably start working up to it as a career change and try and think of it as that. Come to as many events and classes and panels and talks as I could. Just learn as much as possible about the industry. Maybe even start taking the Bookseller magazine just to learn a little bit about it. And just try and really work up to it and not think of it as an impossible dream, getting an agent, getting published, but really try and prepare for it and be ready by knowing as much about the industry as I could, making sure that my book was as good as it could be and as marketable as it possibly could be.